Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Spencer Pauly, the Western Washington reporter for the Center Square, and with me today is investigative reporter TJ Martinell. We're talking about his recent story on a proposed Washington bill that would increase the state's gas tax and other fees, all in order to finance its proposed 2025 through 2027 transportation budget. TJ, first off, let's just get into this here. Can you give me a brief explanation of this House bill? And can you tell me how it's going to make me hate driving in Seattle even more than I already do?
Well, your gas prices are going to go up. That's just going to be the result. I mean, it might go down due to the market, but I think what's going to go up is the portion of that price per gallon that you're going to pay that's not due to supply and demand, but due to taxes. Because what they're going to do is they're going to raise the tax by 9 cents. Right now, it's 49 cents. But what makes this bill unique compared to any other gas tax increase in the past is it's going to be indexed to inflation. So right now, inflation is not too bad. It's around 2.4%. But in 2021, it was at 7%. So that means that the price of gas would increase by 7% automatically without any legislative vote, with any vote of the voters, without any referendum or initiative. It would just automatically go up.
Okay, so as you just described, like indexing the tax rate seems like it could really suck for drivers, especially if we see another inflation spike, whether that comes from another pandemic or something else. Is that what others are saying? Is that what you're hearing from the state?
What's going on is, on top of paying the 49-cent gas tax for the state, we also pay the federal gas tax. And then on top of that, there's the Climate Commitment Act, which people debate the extent to which it affects gas prices. But some people argue that it can add 30, 40, 50 cents, depending on the carbon auction, the carbon allowances prices. So you could theoretically be paying at some point more than $1 out of every gallon of, if the price of gas is $5, hopefully not, but if it's $5, it means that $1 of that is in taxes. So that's the main question: is how much of the price of gas is due to taxation, directly or indirectly.
Okay, eventually the line for cheaper gas at Costco is going to be too long, I think, here, especially with all these increases. But, when it comes to like increased gas prices and whatnot, are they pushing us to switch to electric vehicles, or are there going to be fees associated with those too?
Well, it's interesting is they also have, this bill also includes a state highway user fee.
Of course.
And right. And this is the interesting thing to watch, is they've been trying to get the gas tax revenue it's not declining very fast, but it's not keeping up with what they feel is the cost of transportation projects, and it's not able to provide proper funding, and it's going to go down as vehicle fuel efficiency increases. There's going to be a gasoline vehicle registration ban for new vehicles starting in a couple of years, and then on top of that, you have this push for EVs. So what they're trying to do is find an alternative revenue source, and one of them has been this road usage charge, but they just cannot thread the needle of privacy protection, because if you just check the odometer, that's great for someone who never drives out of state. That's a problem for somebody who commutes, like someone who lives in Vancouver, but most of their driving is in Oregon, or somebody who lives in, right on the border with Idaho and spends a lot of time driving out of state. But if nobody wants to have a GPS tracking device on their car, tracking them everywhere they go to determine whether it's in state or out of state, or if it's off public roads. And that raises a whole question of overhead. The gas tax doesn't cost any money hardly to collect, because it's done automatically. It's anonymous. It's impossible to get around it for the most part. So they haven't been able to figure that out. So I think what they're doing here is they're just doing a state highway fee where they just charge people, and they keep it simple. They don't try to get into the nitty gritty details. So that's the interesting part about that.
TJ, how do you enforce a highway use fee? Is it like the good to go pass where you go in the lane and it scans your license plate?
It's done when you register the vehicle. So from what I'm reading is it's done. This is what they were going to do with the road usage charge proposal, which was put out by the transportation committee chair, is they would just read your odometer every time you went to register your vehicle or renew your vehicle registration. Kind of like how you had to go they had emission testing where you had to go get the emissions tested for your car before you could get the vehicle registration renewal. So that's what they're going with right now. And I think what we're going to see, that might be the approach they take, is they just increase the state highway user fee, and people won't complain because the alternative is a road usage charge, which is incredibly, based on public feedback, incredibly unpopular.
Right.
So that's where people have been noting just the overwhelming lopsided testimony opposed to it, because the other issue that they'd have to deal with is what are you allowed to do with the revenue? The state gas tax cannot be used for anything other than state highway projects, whereas with other things, including the money that they get from the Climate Commitment Act through the quarterly auctions, that can be spent on different things like transit. So that's another issue that they're avoiding having to deal with by increasing the gas tax. And in fact, there was a guy years ago at an event who there was a proponent of the road usage charge, but he got up and just said, just increase the gas tax, that just keep increasing it. And that's going to solve things, because his argument was people are going to pay less in the long run as vehicle fuel efficiency goes up. Now, that's going to be a problem, though, when we finally reach a point where you cannot register a new vehicle that runs on gasoline in Washington State because of a state law. But when he was giving this speech or address, that was before they put in this ban. So it's going to be an interesting situation in the next couple of years, where if they just decide to keep increasing the gas tax, the problem is that people are going to continue to be shifting over to electric vehicles, either by choice or because of just necessity.
Right.
So this transportation budget is seemingly fixing the problem in the short term, but there's still long-term questions to be answered.
Is there a budget deficit within the transportation budget? I mean, why do we need so much revenue? Is this a dire situation?
So there's a combination of things. One, they're underfunded for maintenance and preservation, meaning they're not spending enough to keep the current infrastructure maintained and preserved. There has also been cost overruns. The contracts for the projects are going above what they're estimated, inflation. But at the same time, the Deputy Secretary of the Washington State Department of Transportation has said a couple of years ago that it's not that they lack money. They have more money than they've ever had. It's just it's being prioritized for new projects. So that's part of the problem, is the legislature, and this is something Governor Jay Inslee, when he was in office, was complaining about, is that the legislature was not focusing enough on maintenance and preservation regarding the priorities for the money that WSDOT was receiving. So that's kind of what's going on, is you're spending a lot of money on new projects, whereas there's also the maintenance and preservation. So one could argue it's not that they have a lack of money, which they're getting more money than they've ever had. It's that they're trying to have all these projects going on and they don't have enough money.
It seems like with this bill here too, it just confuses users or just drivers in general. Like, what are they paying for? All this, and I don't know. TJ, I feel like they're going all around that. Like you said, like, why don't you just increase the gas tax then at this point? Then
I think the issue is, and this was raised by one of the people testifying at the public hearing, is they said, here's the problem with indexing it to inflation. It's an increase without a vote and without any public input. It pardon the expression, but it puts the gas tax increase on automatic pilot or automatic,
self-driving.
Yeah. It's where, I mean, if inflation got really out of control, on top of people losing their purchasing power of their dollar, now they got to go spend even more money to fill up the same amount of fuel in their car.
Right.
So that's the issue. The problem with it is, one could argue, is that that's great that the state gets to have its gas tax rate indexed to inflation, but our wages are not indexed to inflation. I don't know of any employer who has a contract with their employee that says your wages are automatically going to go up if inflation occurs. Right. So you have people whose the value of their savings and wages is going down while the cost of their tax burden is going up. So that's kind of a double whammy for people. So, yeah.
I mean, like, TJ, gas out here is just already so expensive. I out here in Seattle, like, the gas station by me, it's about $4.69, I would say, last I checked. And that forces me to not drive as much. I mean, I'm lucky to live in Seattle, where I guess I can use the light rail or a bus system, but that's not the case for a vast majority of Washingtonians. So,
yeah.
TJ, go ahead.
I think the issue is going to be that people who aren't the non-wealthy people are the ones who are going to get hit. If you make enough money, you can still take your boat and your RV and your motorhome and go drive to Eastern Washington, where gas is probably going to be cheaper. It's not going to hurt you as much. But if you're in the middle class or you're in the you're working class, it's going to hit you hard, especially if you have to commute. So this is where in rural areas it hits people hard, where the wages are less. Gas prices may be less, but wages are less, but they also have to drive much further to get the same amenities. As if you live in an urban area or you live in some suburban part of Bellevue or Seattle, everything you need is within walking distance, and you don't have to drive, but there's some people who have to drive to get to where they need to go or to get what they want. They are absolutely dependent on their car in a way that somebody who has a townhouse in some part of downtown Bellevue, they don't really have to worry about it. You can just go to the grocery store or go watch a movie at the Lincoln Center or whatever it is. Lincoln
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what something I think these state leaders should really consider here. But TJ, let's just talk. What's the current status of the proposed bill? Is it being discussed? Where is it sitting at right now currently?
Well, it had its public hearing yesterday, and I'm not sure if it's going to be interesting because there's also going to be the Senate proposal. It's not currently scheduled for an executive action right now or committee vote. So the one thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to reconcile it with the Senate bill and any differences there. So you're going to see different priorities coming to a head. And there might be people who push back on the gas tax because that could be the gas tax increase could easily be a campaign issue where someone could say, my opponent voted for see those gas prices? They did that. And that's powerful rhetoric for voters where if it's an election where pocketbook issues are the order of the day. So it will be interesting to see how they vote and if they vote for an increase, how much it's going to be. They might pick a number that just doesn't make people feel too outraged. And so I'm guessing a lot of debate moving forward, but this is the proposal as it is right now, but it could very well change.
Hey, TJ, well, I know you'll keep an eye on that one. So, all right, with that, that'll be the end of this episode here of Washington Focus. TJ, thanks for having me on here, and we'll see you all later.